Love is not primarily a relationship to a specific person. It is an attitude, an orientation to the world as a whole. If I truly love one person, I love all persons. I love the world. I love life. If I can say to somebody else, I love you, I must be able to say, I love in you everybody. I love through you the world. I love in you also myself.
Does it connect to some personal experience, let's say a moment or a situation that happened to you recently?
It's almost like big mind, little mind, big love, little love. In the big unconditional love, it is all encompassing. You feel that it's expansive. It opens you up to appreciate and care. I think is a good word for me, at least, to care for the world or other people. This is the power of love, from my experience.
Is there some particular memory that you remember recently, something that happened perhaps in the past 3 days or a week or so, that you felt this expansiveness?
Absolutely.
Can you tell?
In fact, I can tell you about this experience.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be quite a troubling session, because after the experience of a big long consultation, a lot of dialogue between the two of us, I felt that the information I gave to her was then used against me. This is the way I felt afterwards.
This description that Fromm gives.
Well, it was my counselor's reaction to me at that point that made me see the difference. Her approach and her gentleness touched something for me at that point. A memory came up for me that was from many, many years ago, but it was a situation a very painful situation where I experienced violence. I was attacked, and it was painful. But in describing that to her, there was a moment in which she helped me look at myself in a forgiving way. I then felt something melt inside of me, and I realized I didn't need to keep beating myself up. This was a turning point for me. And in that experience, there was an opening. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, and the
openness. So
it's
a form of liberation. It's like all of a sudden I could stop beating myself up.
Yeah. Here, Fromm also talks about some kind of liberation that has to do with an attitude that is not addressed to any particular person so much as to the entire world. This kind of overflowing.
Okay, let me just go back to when I left my friend's session 2 weeks before.
Okay.
I felt very much like somebody who was poisoned in a way. So in that experience, I'm walking around as if there's something wrong with me. So when I feel that way, there's nothing I can really offer, because I'm not worthy of offering anything. Okay? But after the session I had with my counselor, I felt so much more, I had more generosity. Right? And so then when I go out to interact, there is love. There's compassion.
put aside all the context, what
Okay.
happened before and after
Okay.
and so on. Just look at yourself in this moment of expansiveness. Can you describe what happened there?
Yeah.
You added the word expansive. I think it's a very relevant word.
Yeah.
Are there other descriptions
Oh,
that
yeah.
you can
I could go
describe
on
how
and
you
on.
were
Oh, yeah.
attitude or
Well, I can tell you that I just felt happy and light.
okay.
Instead of heavy
Okay.
and serious, it was like
Okay. Other things that you can describe?
the kind of, actually, to be honest, kind of cleansed.
I would like to divide what you said, the different descriptions of that situation, to two groups. There were things such as relief, happiness, purged, that relate to yourself. They describe yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Then you said something else that has to do with the relationship. You said connected to the world, and you said that is opposed to what you sometimes feel, which is a distance or alienation from the world. You feel that the world is far, perhaps difficult to reach, difficult to understand, difficult to deal with, difficult to connect with. Yeah. The second part is where I think we touch Fromm's description, who is talking about relationships, right? He's not saying, oh, I now feel energy in my head. He says, I am with the entire world. Right? So can you elaborate a little bit about that connectedness aspect?
Yeah, the connectedness is I'm having a hard time coming up with the words because it's really just more of a feeling for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a feeling, and that's why I was pointing to here, because I was feeling. It's a good feeling when you obviously when I feel connected. It feels.
Let's look at what happened so far. It's interesting that Fromm talks about relationship, about an attitude. And he says, real love is not me to you. Real love is expansiveness, it's openness to the entire world. And yet, you were quite interested in the aspects that are inside you.
Yeah.
Happiness, relief, which is legitimate, but it's still not the relationship. So let's divide two ways of being. There is a way of being that I'm inside myself. And this is when I try to feel my energies, I'm happy, I'm sad, my memories, I'm in myself. And Fromm says, but there is another way of being. You can be beyond yourself. You can flow out, you can be expansive. Right. Fromm says, love is not a feeling. It's an attitude. It's a way of opening to the world. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Okay, so now I would have to. Okay, so it's an attitude.
Yeah. Right, that's what he said.
Yeah.
It's an attitude. Yeah, the second line. It's an attitude, an orientation to the world as a whole. It's not even to one person.
Yeah, now that we're going backwards here and looking at that, I understand that. I understand what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Wow, this is quite a passage. As long as there is fear, as long as there is any form of anxiety, you cannot possibly love. Love has nothing whatsoever to do with pleasure and desire. Can there be loving relationships so long as there is any separateness, division? One may hold the hand of another and yet be miles away, wrapped in one's own thoughts and problems. Where there is a center, which is the feeling of me, which isolates itself, there is division and resistance.
I wonder if we could stop here and look at the last sentence. Where there is a center, that is me, I, right? There is no love. And I think it touches Fromm that says real love is not something you feel in your heart. Real love is a relationship. It's an openness. It's an expansiveness. So I wonder if you can think of some experience where you felt that.
I'm thinking about a few years ago when I was in it's a monastery out in California called Tassajara, and they have a work period there where you can go and you spend time doing all kinds of, whether you're working in the kitchen or gardening or whatever. And in the morning, before the work period, you get into a circle. So it's a community of maybe 150 people or something. There's just a great experience of people express themselves, whether they're when they're leaving, especially, right? Because there's a lot of emotion when they're leaving.
So, what is your experience in that situation?
Well, when I'm I feel very humble when I'm standing in that circle. I've done it now a few times. For some reason, it's very you feel very. It gets back to feelings again, but there's a sense of what this human experience is, and I guess the tender, just a lot of tender emotions that are common and that get shared, and so that's why I use the word humbling, because it just makes me somehow it takes me out of myself.
Yeah.
So
the experiences is the tenderness is a connectedness to others.
Yeah, and very. That makes me think of another situation, similar environment of everyone waking up, the same deal, a monastery, everybody waking up very early, 4:30, 5 in the morning, to go out into the fields and do the gardening. They call it hoeing. And it's hoeing meditation. So you spend, an hour all together. But, this is 100 people out in the field hoeing. And nobody, it's all quiet. It's all silent. No conversation. Just it comes back to, for me, I can't help but to come back to this very strong feeling of this what it means to be community,